Hey, what up? It's Rusty from Splayed. Um, Maybe we'll have like a technology show. I don't know. This is a little bit out of the ordinary. It's super ad hoc. I may not even post it yet. What's up, guys? Uh, but basically, check this out, man. I have this thought that I want to convey. I'm a software engineer, so it's a bit technical, but it has to do with everything, with interfaces. We're talking about cameras today a little bit specifically because we use them for Splayed, or we're going to use more cameras for Splayed. This interface is shit, and I want to talk a little bit about why, about what makes a good interface. It applies to database interfaces. It talks to software service interfaces, hardware interfaces, car interfaces when you drive your car, right? It's something called conditionally relevant or conditionally optional parameters. Okay, so when you have an interface like this, right, you got a couple of buttons on here, and a lot of times what marketing people like to do with products is try and quote unquote simplify the interface. They try to reduce the number of buttons. Please understand that some systems are inherently complex. All right, and so what you can't simplify an inherently complex system. All you can do is make it appear simple. Okay, so all you're doing is you are hiding complexity. So there should be more buttons on here because there are more functions that this camera supports, okay, than there are buttons. So what they've done, you'll look here and you can see on these buttons right here, you've got arrow keys, and then you've got text next to those arrow keys, which indicates some kind of a function like autofocus or whatever. And as I'm going through the menu, you know, if I pull up the screen here, let's turn it on for a second. I'm looking at some settings. This is another example of it. But in order to go to settings, I have to push the record button. So if I'm in video mode, this right here, shoot, can't get it. This right here, in video mode, functions as the record button. But in camera mode, it functions as a settings toggle. That doesn't look like a settings icon to me. How the hell was I supposed to know that this brought up the settings menu? Right? That's kind of stupid. Anyway, that's what I'm talking about. Conditionally relevant, conditionally meaningful parameters. You have buttons that do different things in different contexts. Okay, and it's a trick that interface designers use to quote unquote simplify an interface. Again, the complexity is still there. I still have two different functions. I still have two different buttons. I just now have to memorize under which context the button means something different. It's actually harder for me to learn. Okay, because now it's conditionally relevant. I have to understand all the contexts in which the meaning of that button can change, and I have to understand and I have to memorize those. Okay, so good job, dipshits. All right, anyway, there's other options here as well. So, for example, I would think intuitively by looking at these arrow buttons that I could navigate this interface. Right? I would be wrong. So let me see if I can show you an example here. If I come over here and I push this right button right here, okay? I just turned on trap focus mode. I didn't go to the right. I turned on an autofocus mode. That's because the function of this button is autofocus, okay? No one knows why. Anyway, I'm going to hit that again and turn that back off. If I go up here and hit this Q, which, you know, because Q means things, I push Q. Now my arrow keys function like arrow keys. Okay? Do you understand how stupid this interface is? All right, anyway, but that'll go away. After about 5 minutes, if I'm not paying attention, it'll flip back. And then I'll hit this button again, trying to toggle an option, and it'll go back to autofocus, which I don't have to turn on. If I didn't notice it, then all of a sudden I could be live on a shot, and I could have the wrong focus setting because of shitty interface, okay? It's already reverted back, so now if I hit it, you'll notice it's putting on trap focus. It's no longer navigating. Just in that much amount of time. You know, I look away for a second, go over, hit the right button, and I've turned on focus, right? Really, really, really bad interface, and it's all to reduce the number of buttons that appear on this camera to make it look like the camera is simpler than it actually is, okay? But all the complexity is still there. The penalty to the consumer is still there. Please be clear. They still have just as many functions to learn to be able to use this camera. It's just that it's hidden from them what those functions are and how to find them and when they're appropriate. So that is an example. And then again, here, this button here. So we'll go back out of settings mode. We'll flip it into video up here at this toggle up here. Now we're in video record mode, right? And in video record mode, if I hit this, I'm recording video or I'm not recording video. So another great example of shit. There's nothing up here. There's a shutter speed toggle. Okay, but if I change it to have like a mode where it'll capture 3 different shutter speeds, then this turns into a delta toggle, which indicates what the offset is for the 3 different shutter speeds. It's really bad. Okay, I would rather have 2 different fucking sliders so that I'm always mechanically using the same slider in the same context. Okay, another example of this, I'm going to turn this off. Another example of this is car dashboards. So I've noticed on my car, I have a Honda Civic. There are certain cases where, for like air conditioning controls, certain functions are only applicable to air, to like in-air circulation mode. May only be applicable to cooling or only applicable to heat. The UI doesn't tell you this. They've tried to reduce the number of buttons. So what you end up with is a button like circulate internal air, and then what'll happen is then you'll flip it to heat, and your in-air circulate will just shut off for you, right? And that's how they tried to solve the fact that that button isn't actually applicable in heat mode, right? So the proper way to do this, the proper way to design a contract, I just got a little bit insecure about my hair. Again, this is an ad hoc video, so it's splayed. Let's be real. I got a little bit nervous about how my unwashed, sullied hair looks, and I just addressed that right now live for everybody. I might keep it in. The point that I'm trying to make is that let's get back to the dashboard of the car interface. Okay, so what the proper way to solve this with any kind of interface is not to try and hide the complexity. That is not the way to do that. You have a different interface for the different function. So on a car dashboard, I would actually have 2 panels, a cold air panel and a hot air panel. And I can only turn on heat in the hot air panel. I can only turn on cold in the cold air panel. And then I have buttons that are applicable to each mode. And that may mean some redundancy, and that's okay. So, or you can potentially put buttons that are applicable to both down the center, right? And these are buttons that are applicable in both contexts, and then buttons that are only applicable to cold would be in the cold air side. That clearly communicates to the user which functions are applicable contextually and what buttons are applicable in both contexts, right? It's standard polymorphism, right? Standard inheritance, right? These are inheriting common buttons, right? And then extending them with context-specific sets of capability. Tesla! Elon Musk, get at me, right? I don't actually have a Tesla, but if you guys have the advantage of having a software interface, so this is really easy for you guys to do. Maybe you're already doing it. I don't know. I assume you guys build good stuff, so maybe you do this. But anyway, car interface designers, seriously, please, in the future, I want buttons that are applicable only to cold to be in a cold panel. I want buttons that are only applicable to heat to be in a heat panel. Stop merging it and then let me have to figure out when a button doesn't actually make sense. That actually makes your system way harder to learn. Camera designers, okay? I want arrow buttons that only do arrow. That's it. Like, don't make my arrow button do something else, okay? My arrow button should be an arrow button. Look at, you've got like 5 or 6 different white labels there. I would rather have 5 or 6 extra buttons on this, please. Okay, just deal with it. Or if you have to use this, again, it's about context. Use some sort of a sliding panel to cover them up or whatever. I don't know. Figure something out. Or just have them all on there. Honestly, you don't want the mechanical overhead of having an extra panel. That's fine. Or give me a digital interface. We've got touch screens now, right? Just give me a digital interface if you need extra functions. Let my arrow buttons be arrow buttons. Okay. If you need it to be ergonomic, then really, if you want muscle memory to be a thing, then that's all the more reason, right, to make them consistent. Because the fastest way to train in muscle memory on a camera is to have a button be the same thing every time. Muscle memory takes like exponentially more time to gain when it's contextual, when it's conditionally appropriate. A bike would be like infinitely harder to learn if turning left on the handlebars turned you right in some contexts and left in other contexts, right? It would take your brain way more time to learn that than if it's consistent. The brain likes consistency, okay? So guys, contracts, okay? Just give me more buttons, all right? Just if you absolutely have to have these functions out there and available for muscle memory, because that's the whole point, is to make them tactile and available for learning them so that you don't have to look at them. That's why you have physical buttons, okay? So if you want that, then give me more buttons. Or give me real physical buttons that have like a little mini LCD on them, so at least I can switch modes somewhere here. And when I'm in a different mode, it shows me the function of the button in that mode, right? Like maybe, but again, you're still sort of defeating the purpose in terms of muscle memory at that point. So guys, interfaces, this applies to everything. Software, databases, cameras, cars, computers, houses. I don't know, man. If it's doing two different things, give it two different contracts. If there's shared functionality, put them in a shared space. Peace out. Splayed.